Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. On the hazardous weather graphic here, winter weather advisory out for quite an area, all southwest Alaska down to Bristol Bay, looking for 5 to 8 inches of snow. This advisory currently out and will be out until through tomorrow afternoon, looking for up to 5 to 8 inches of snow. Some areas could even see up to 10 inches of snow here with all that moisture flowing northeastward out of the Bering there on up into the northeast interior. Still get some snow east of the mountains here, but Susitna Valley is looking for 2 to 4 inches with even lesser amounts as you head east and southeast in toward the Kenai Peninsula, Manaska Valley areas. Then we've got a winter wind advisory for the eastern Alaska range. That kicks in about 10 p.m. this evening and continues into probably tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon. Therefore, winds will increase in gusts of 50 miles per hour here through the passes there, again along the eastern Alaska range. And then there's a winter storm warning out here for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast. That's for out for Saturday. And that's for near blizzard conditions as winds blowing snow, blowing snow, reduce visibilities down to less than a quarter mile or even to near zero, and that's expected to occur on Saturday. Going to the satellite imagery, you can see the clouds with the storm center just southwest of, or rolling up onto the eastern Aleutians there, front farther to the east, and that's going to put all that moisture right into the southwest interior, already spreading onto the coast here. And so looks really good for that winter weather advisory that'll be out in the 5 to 8 inches of snow. Otherwise, just mostly just clouds here over the southern interior, but that'll continue to increase and thicken and lower here through this evening. Up to the north, a few breaks up over the upper Yukon Valley areas, and for the southeast coast, starting out kind of cloudy, but breaking out here this afternoon. Still some lingering showers up here along the eastern North Gulf Coast, and that sort of extends back in toward Prince William Sound. And some good clearing up here, though, from the central southeast coast there right up into the Yukon, and then back into the clouds and out to the west. Got another system affecting the Shimia area, kind of a weakening frontal boundary right through here as a stronger one begins to develop farther to the southwest. And southwest flow here, lots of moisture over the much of the Bering Sea. Really not moving a whole lot here, but kind of drifting off to the northeast a little bit. On the chart today, here's roughly the position this afternoon, mid-afternoon of that frontal boundary. Still off the southwest coast, but snow spreading northward and precipitation falling in the form of rain back toward Kodiak Island, or mixed rain and snow there, but it'll probably become rain here this evening. That'll extends back all the way across the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians. And then things get a lot more showery out here to the west with rain and snow showers, maybe periods of rain, snow, or snow and rain mixed. Wind's not really much of a problem out there with that low center, and again, weakening frontal boundary with that. Otherwise, variable clouds, maybe some isolated flurries over the mountains here, North Gulf Coast range there, maybe the eastern Alaska range, whatever fell very light, and also along the Arctic coast, the usual low clouds, areas of low clouds, fog, flurries, and that type of pattern. High pressure, light winds up over the northwest interior. Forecast for tonight, again, that low drifting northeastward, but the first front there pushes out and actually just weakens into a trough here as it slides eastward, kind of leaving, breaking away from the low center there, and it'll push a band of rain with it that'll reach the coastal areas here, mixed rain and snow inland. And then it looks like best chance of snow south central Alaska will be overnight tonight, and then that'll continue to spread northward. Susitna Valley looking for 2 to 4 inches of snow later tonight through tomorrow afternoon, and then the winter weather advisory is back here to the west with snow chances increasing over the Copper River Basin throughout the day tomorrow, and even up over the central eastern 40-mile country. You'll see the clouds become a little more prominent with increasing areas of light snow possible, but just to the north and west. Should be a partly mostly sunny day, definitely dry. Some areas will see more clouds than others, And then pretty good chance of some light snow up here from the Noatak Valley in the western Arctic coast, right on down across the Kotzebue Sound area, the Chukchi Sea, into the northern Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, day much like today for the Arctic coast up there, with areas of low clouds, fog, and flurries continuing. Lighter winds there on the eastern coast. There's currently a wind advisory out until this evening, but definitely lighter winds in store for the east side there, and still a chance of showers here for the northern panhandle. And it looks partly sunny on down to the south, and definitely dry with light winds across all of the southeast coast there. Picks up a little bit, but nothing really strong. Maybe 15 to 30, gusts 35 miles an hour here later tonight. And then for tomorrow, becomes a little more southerly here, so that's going to lift that moisture area northward. Looking at periods of snow here from roughly the Pribilof Islands right up in across the Kilbrook Mountain areas, Kuskokwim Valley, on up along and just north of the Tanana, central and eastern Tanana Valley. Should stay mostly dry over here. Eastern Copper River Basin on into the 40-mile country, with just areas of light snow showing up there, mainly on the southern slopes of the mountainous terrain. Rain and snow along the North Gulf Coast. And again, snow chances actually decrease. The Sitna Valley again, Cook Inlet, eastern or western Kenai Peninsula. Probably won't see a whole lot of snow tomorrow or precipitation, but mixed rain and snow definitely back across the Alaska Peninsula. Next frontal boundary pushing eastward here, much stronger front there, or low center, 975 millibars. Now put pretty good winds, gale force winds at least there, into the western Aleutians, pushing eastward toward Adak in the afternoon. A break in between there, between this low and the next one. Looks pretty good tomorrow afternoon from the Pribilofs on down to Atka, and improving throughout the day, probably going precipitation free front Alaska by late afternoon, and pretty good conditions, northeast, dry northeast flow there, keeping it VFR across all this area with probably partly to mostly clear skies, and then a weak trough keeps a chance of snow on the central Arctic coast and North Slope. Outlook for the first day of the weekend. Again, this front lifting northward puts a squeeze on the atmosphere with an Arctic high up farther to the north over the North Slope back to the west. Snow and blowing snow on the increase, pricing winds 25 to 35 miles an hour, occasional gusts of 40 to 50. That'll result in considerable snow and blowing snow, so the winter weather advisory out, or I'm sorry, the winter storm warning out for the St. Lawrence Island area and the Bering Strait coast, possibly even Nome as well. And then snow back to the southwest, warmer temperatures, mixture of rain or snow in the afternoon here, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, eastward across the Kuskokwim Delta. Then you're into the rain here with a warm front for the Alaska Peninsula, rain with this cold front trailing back across the central Aleutians. Looks like a pretty wet day, but winds won't be all that strong for the central Aleutians. And then winds increase back to the west there toward this 969 millibar low, and colder temperatures. Rain and snow showers change over to mostly just snow showers during the afternoon, and mostly cloudy with a few flurries right up through here, and even the eastern Arctic coast, in spite of the fact that you've got not a 1,025 millibar surface high in the area, and a mostly sunny day southeast interior on down the southeast coast. For lows tonight, anywhere from 5 to 10 below, maybe even as low as 15 below. But generally, the 0 degree isotherm extending from southern Norton Sound northeastward there, just north of Fort Yukon. And then single numbers and teens warm dramatically into the 20s here to near 30 south of the Alaska Range, mid-30s Kodiak Island into the North Gulf Coast, and upper 20s over the northern panhandle to lower to mid-30s, mostly lower 30s over the coastal areas, and 30s for the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow, right around 0 up there on the Arctic coast, with 5 to 10 here over the Brooks Range and the North Slope, but the highs staying below 0 there. Shishmaref on up to Kivalina and Point Hope, with 5 above. The forecast high for Savunga, 30 for St. Paul, upper 30s for the Aleutians, mid to upper 30s to near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, especially the 40s there near King Salmon, mid 40s Kodiak Island, Kodiak State Airport on up to possibly Seldovia, and even northward there, reaching close to 40 or into the lower 40s right into south central Alaska, Anchorage and Palmer, into the Copper River Basin, mid to upper 30s over the 40-mile country, and 40s for the Panhandle, cool into the 30s, lower to mid there for Saturday morning, and 20s to lower 30s here over southern Alaska. Cool too, back below zero over the northern half of the state. A little chillier now for the Arctic coast and the North Slope, lows 15 to 20 below. And for the afternoon, those will stay below zero, 5 to 10 below for the highs there. And 30s to mid 40s over southern Alaska. And mostly in the lower to mid 40s for the Panhandle. And 30s out west there, except 40s for the central Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We've got a lot of IFR sliding northeastward here. Well, from the eastern Aleutians, across the southeast Bering, right in across the southwest interior, and in toward across the Alaska Range into Cook Inlet, and then northward across the Susitna Valley up there to the Alaska Range. Kind of a break in the area there, right across the Madanuska Valley, and then more IFR here up into Prince William Sound. Pretty good VFR except for the northern southeast coast, and marginal up there to the north and northwest part of the state, and gathering IFR out to the west there with that next front pushing in, spreads eastward to Adak in the afternoon. Otherwise, kind of a VFR break there for Atka on up and into the Pribilofs late tomorrow afternoon, all the way up through the Bering Strait and Chukchi Sea. Just a patch of marginal VFR on the east central Arctic coast. And we've got IFR here persisting in the afternoon, just west of Cook Inlet, Alaska Range, the Kuskokwim Valley up into the Mid-Tanana Valley, and on the south side of the Alaska Range, Windy Pass and southward with less IFR in Prince William Sound, and stays about the same in the Panhandle. Then it's just good VFR across all the southeast coast for Saturday morning. Still marginal VFR, some areas of IFR here over south central Alaska up to and south of the Alaska Range. Marginal VFR, Tanana Valley, and IFR here, Bristol Bay into the Auckland Mountains and across the Alaska Peninsula. And then this front looks like it's coming to pieces here as it pushes eastward, but holds together fairly well for Saturday afternoon, making landfall along the Yukon Delta coast. Of course, earlier on for Nunivak Island, pushing up across St. Lawrence Island in the afternoon and trailing back here across the Pribilofs into the Fox Islands to about west to about Atka, and then some improvement farther out to the west there. Area of IFR, or area of VFR here for the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise marginal Kodiak Island, up into central southern Cook Inlet, portions of the Kenai Peninsula, northwestward through here. Pretty good VFR for Saturday afternoon, Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, Madanuska Valley, and most areas to the north, central, and again, VFR for the southeast coast. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan will both be VFR tomorrow. And for the Lake Clark and Merrill passes, looks like it'll be IFR with snow for those areas, as well as rainy. And for windy, marginal VFR, lowest conditions will be on the southern approach there, where it'll likely be IFR at times. And for Isabel, occasionally marginal. And then for Tanita, for Mentasta, it'll be VFR. They'll stay in the VFR flying area there. And Tanita also should be a mostly VFR kind of day tomorrow with the lower conditions either to the east or off to the northwest there. So Portage shaping up like this. Starting out IFR, could see an improvement to marginal VFR in the afternoon and just kind of oscillating there between IFR and marginal throughout the day. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR trending toward VFR in the afternoon. And for the freezing levels here, 4,000 to 6,000 feet, eastern Gulf of Alaska, on up across the northern Panhandle with 2,000 feet back across near Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay. Otherwise, at the surface here, coming across very close to the Pribilofs through central Bristol Bay and then hugging the coastline here, mostly north and along the border there for the Panhandle. Icing looking like this. For tomorrow, again, with all that moisture sliding northeastward here in that southwest jet, areas of isolated moderate here from the Pribilofs, kind of diminishing here from southwest to northeast throughout the day as the whole area pushes northeast. So could be some areas of considerable moderate rime icing here along the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, and maybe the northern Prince William Sound with some icing all the way up across the Yukon Flats there into Canada. And then with that next front coming in, kind of a narrow band of considerable moderate rime icing above about 5,000 feet here, pushing eastward with the main frontal boundary there in toward AKwx in the afternoon. Otherwise icing free places like the southeast coast and the west and northwest. And for the jet stream, strong jet here coming across the western Pacific, but splits here as it approaches the Aleutians, coming up over the ridge there, diving southward, and then south to north flow here. Actually a little more southwesterly than what I've got drawn here, but about 60 to 70 knots. And then the Arctic jet up there to the north, affecting the mostly the northwest interior and Arctic coast. And for 9,000 feet, pretty good south to southwest flow here, anywhere from 25 to 40 knots over the interior, and about 30 there across Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, 20 knots, Gulf of Alaska, southeast interior, and northwesterlies at about 10 to 15 for the Panhandle. Out west, big increase in the winds of that next storm coming in, anywhere from 55 to 65 knots, and then lighter winds with high pressure up here over the northern Bering Sea with west-southwesterlies along the Arctic coast. At 3,000 feet, only 5 to 15 up there, maybe 20 on the west side. And those winds 40 to 55 knots there for the western Aleutians, and southwesterlies 25 to 35 over the southwest interior. Light northwesterlies 5 to 15 for the Panhandle, as well as much of the southeast and central interior. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop here in the shaded areas, Talkeetna Mountains, Alaska Range, southwestward into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Smooth for the Panhandle, moderate chop out over the western and central Aleutians. And I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Spring has sprung. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
Next Tuesday, March 20th, is the vernal equinox, also known as the official Spring of the Leaf Day.
Meanwhile, next week, Sunday, March 25th, marks the official Spring of the Year Day.
Plus, we have a really cool pairing of planets and our moon on the night of March 18th. What are we talking about? Let's show you. Have you ever wondered why we call spring, spring? Well, that word spring is simply short for the phrases spring of the leaf and spring of the year. Now, spring of the leaf is pretty obvious because at this time of the year, leaves literally do spring up out of the branches and grass springs up out of the ground. And that's why we call spring, spring.
But what does Spring of the Year mean? Well, believe it or not, before 1752 in England and America, the new year officially began when spring began on March 25th. Or to put it quite simply, the new year sprang up at the same time that the leaves and grass did.
In fact, when George Washington and Ben Franklin were young, they and all the other American colonists wished each other Happy New Year and Happy Spring on the same day, on March 25th. However, when the English calendar was reformed, Parliament declared that starting in 1752, the new year would no longer begin in March, but would be celebrated on January 1st, a tradition begun by the Romans in 153 BC.
Now, both springs are related to the vernal equinox, which happens this year on Tuesday, March 20th at 12:16 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
But what does the term vernal equinox really mean? Let's not forget that the first day of spring is really an astronomical event, which marks one of the 2 days of the year when our sun is smack dab on the celestial equator.
The other day being the first day of autumn. When this happens in September, we call it the autumnal equinox, and when it happens in March, we call it the vernal equinox.
Most people today don't keep track of the sun and its movements through the sky throughout the seasons like our ancestors did. But it's a lot of fun to watch the sun change its place on the horizon every day from equinox to equinox.
Starting this week, if you make note of where the sun rises and sets on the horizon each day, using landmarks like trees or buildings, you'll notice that the sun will rise just a little bit further north of east each day and will set a little bit further north of west each day.
The sun will continue moving northward week after week until June 21st, the first day of summer, the summer solstice, when it will rise its farthest north of east and set its farthest north of west.
After which it will start to move southward week after week until once again it will rise due east and set due west on the autumnal equinox, the first day of autumn in September.
All right, let's see what the planets are doing on the equinox. Okay, we've got our skies set to sunset on the evening of March 18th. If you look due west just after sunset, near the horizon, you'll see the slimmest crescent moon you've probably ever seen. It may be tough to spot due to the glare of the sun, but we have a way of helping you find it.
Just to the right of the crescent moon, you'll see two bright star-like objects. The brighter one is the dazzling planet Venus, and the dimmer one, further to the right, is the planet Mercury.
If you look at either planet through a telescope, you're in for a treat. Since Venus is on the opposite side of the solar system from us right now, we'll be able to see most of its daytime side. Therefore, Venus will be in the gibbous phase.
Mercury, on the other hand, is about to pass between us and the sun, so we'll be seeing more of its nighttime side. So, if you look at it through a telescope, Mercury will be in a crescent phase.
Well, there you have it, a springtime pairing of astronomical proportions.
So, happy spring of the leaf and happy old-fashioned New Year.
Keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at marine forecasts here. Pretty light winds on the south coast, just northwesterly at 15 knots, these at about 6 feet. Lighter, more variable winds up to the north here at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. And Lynn Canal, just a northerly breeze at 10. 5 knots there, forecast for Stevens Passage, and northwest 15 for Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas. And the outlook for the first day of the weekend there on Saturday, east winds just 5 to 10 up there on the eastern North Gulf Coast. And the northerlies pick up to 20 knots here on the south coast with seas building to 8 feet here, really all along the entire stretch of the coastline. So that means small craft advisories. Northern Lynn Canal north at 20 with 4-foot seas, north 10 for Stevens Passage. And now the light winds show up there for Clarence Strait. And for the Prince William Sound zone tomorrow, east 20 knots, 4-foot seas, south 20 with 6-foot seas for the North Gulf Coast, and 15 knots increase to 20 knots there for the Barren Islands, southeast, southern Cook Inlet, and into Kachemak Bay at 20 knots. And the outlook for Saturday, light northerlies for all of Cook Inlet, 2 to 3-foot seas, and not bad there for Kachemak Bay with 15 knots out of the east, back across the Barrens. Really light winds now for the North Gulf Coast and even Prince William Sound, variable to north at 10 knots with seas 6 to 7 feet. And for the Kodiak Island zone here, actually we've got south to southwest wind, southwest 25 across the Alaska Peninsula here with 15 to 17-foot seas. They take from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, they turn southwest, still 25 knots, and right up the east side of Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, southerlies at 20. And for Saturday, much lighter winds there for Bristol Bay, just southeast at 10. That extends down there across that zone from Sitkinak to Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, southwest 20, 8-foot seas, east 15 there on the east side of Kodiak. Small craft advisories continue, south winds 25 for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. And out west, we got gale force winds with that next system coming in to the western Aleutians, 35 knots, 15 to 17-foot seas. And then kind of a, on average, west wind here, 20 knots north of the islands, south side 25 knots, of course 10 to 12-foot seas there, and south of the Fox Islands, southwest 25, 14-foot seas, a little lighter up there to the north, but still 20 knots. And then southwest 25 to 30 knots here for the Fox Islands in store for Saturday with seas running 9 to 11 feet and 25 to 30 knot winds extend across the central Aleutians out to the west, and then we're into full gale out there over the far western Aleutians, southwest 40, 23-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, northerlies 30 knots tomorrow, seas 7 feet in the ice-free waters, northeast at 30 with 13-foot seas for the Pribilofs, and northeast 30 also for St. Matthew Island, and brisk wind advisories out for St. Lawrence Island with those north winds at 25 knots. And then for Saturday, with that frontal boundary lifting northward, again, the winds increase there for St. Lawrence Island. East at 40 in the forecast there with the winter storm warning out, and then south to southeast here along the southwest coast at 30 knots, and south 30 for the Pribilofs. Increased to gale force southerlies for St. Matthew Island with 15-foot seas. And up along the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds west 10 to 15 knots. And on the west side here, just a southwest breeze, and then west turn northwest at 15 for the area from Cape Beaufort on down to Wales. Outlook for Saturday, light north winds about 15 here, with the stronger winds from the Bering Strait southward for Saturday, at least through Saturday afternoon. Southwest, light southwesterlies at 10 for the central and west side, and west to southwest at roughly 15 knots there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, again, a lot of moisture sliding northeastward here, and chance of snow in northern Cook Inlet tonight, kind of a mixture and lighter amounts down here to the south. But still, with this front pushing eastward and weakening into a trough, pretty good chance of rain or rain and snow along the sea level areas of the North Gulf Coast, and some scattered showers over the northern panhandle. And then this front trailing back to the southwest keeps it pretty wet over the eastern Aleutians in toward the Alaska Peninsula. Next system out west, pretty good low associated with that. Gale force winds with the frontal boundary, a break, and then back into the snow here. Mostly north or south of the Alaska Range, but from the Kuskokwim Valley, now slide up in just north of the central Tanana Valley, and anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of snow in those snow advisory areas. Outlook for Saturday, next system drives eastward, rain, snow, blizzard conditions for St. Lawrence Island.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.